Did you know my new least favorite word in the world is roadmap? You probably don't believe me. Let's talk about the Destiny stuff. So there's a lot of talk about this roadmap, and Bungie haven't given us one yet. We've heard delay rumors, and we've seen the quiet twids and all of that. So the main reason the community is speculating a lot is that the devs aren't actually confirming things. But they have been quietly lining things up on their end for the live game, at least in the next couple of months. And the latest database info shows us that Shadow and Order is almost certainly delayed until April, and that Guardian Games will essentially drop in its place. On top of that, there are other limited time events lined up, indications of new collaborations, new weapons, armor sets, cosmetics, and more that Bungie plan to release in the near future. But to keep expectations in check up front, if you want the bigger picture about expansions and what Bungie's plans are for D2 holistically, it's becoming clear that the most we can realistically expect before Marathon is likely the official confirmation of the change in schedule for Shadow and Order. And perhaps an interim calendar, right? Bungie are going to have to announce those things at the very least before March, because the alternative is to simply never release a scheduled major update. And even with how weird things have been recently, I don't think Bungie will do that. So all of that said, if you want to know what's actually coming before and after Shadow and Order, we do have a fairly solid rundown of what to expect, and that's the goal of this video. So I guess if Bungie won't give us an update, then we'll make sense of it ourselves in the meantime. And we can be fairly confident in doing that because, as I said, the next 2 months is pretty set in stone at this point based on what we've learned. So we'll cover it in the video. But before we go any further, a message from our sponsor today, and this is Black Forest Cocoa Powder. You may have heard about cocoa flavanols, and yes, there may be a lot of hype around it, but there are also loads of benefits. In a recent study, more than 20,000 people demonstrated that cocoa flavanols have huge benefits for your heart and your cardiovascular system. And with prolonged use, they can significantly reduce the risk of things like a heart attack, as well as benefiting your general health. And when regular chocolate is made, around 90% of the flavanols are destroyed. But this powder preserves all of the good components, helping to keep your arteries flexible, improve blood flow, and muscle health when it comes to your heart. And here's what medical scientist Simon Mills had to say on the benefits.
Dark chocolate is a medicine. End of. One of the best medicines around. Brain health as well. Cardiovascular health. They do studies where they were able to show changes in the blood flow within minutes.
They call it the heart medicine.
Yeah, heart, circulation, brain. Cocoa and chocolate does have a uplifting effect, which is why we love it so.
Which is why I've been having Black Forest cocoa powder with my coffee every day. Over the long term, each scoop delivers compounds that support cardiovascular health as well as focus. And the good thing is our friends at Black Forest have got a huge discount using only my link below. So right now you can get a 40% off discount for the new year, which is available for only 48 hours. The science on this stuff is clear. It can make a huge difference to your well-being. And so if you don't want to miss out on it, hit the link in the description or pinned comment down below. And be sure to use my link, otherwise you won't get the discount. So check it out, and thanks to Black Forest for sponsoring the video. Starting out for February, we don't know if we'll see any actual events, but we are going to see an Eververse update. Surprise! So it'll actually include Crimson Days items from years ago featured for Bright Dust around Valentine's Day, as well as Bungie featuring Revelry event items which have been unavailable for some time. But outside of cosmetic things being added, we don't have anything else concrete for February. However, Iron Banner does have some content lined up, so that includes the new weapon, Red Husk's Pledge, that's a Void rapid-fire auto rifle, plus there's a new emblem and a shader called Iron Banana, which is kind of amusing, but no confirmation of when we'll see that. Same for heavy metal. There are orange holofoils of the current Arms Week weapons, as well as new weapons like the Micromort, that's a precision frame arc rocket launcher, and Action Item, the first legendary stasis trace rifle, I believe. So there are kind of run-of-the-mill season events which are possibilities ahead of the March content drop. Oh yeah, February will also include the Chinese New Year items once again in the store, and a free gift of Bright Dust as far as we know. And other things that we may see soon include a possible Magic the Gathering collaboration. So there are some icons for an armor set here shared by Colony Deeks. Bungie also, in the patch notes, interestingly referenced Death's Majesty and a Warlock armor set, which appears to be a reference to Magic the Gathering. So I'm not an expert on that, but it's a thing that's reserved in the game. Then we get to March. March 3rd was originally going to be the outlined release date for Shadow and Order, but that's been delayed as far as we know until April. And instead, the Eververse rotation currently indicates that Guardian Games will begin on March 3rd instead, so we'll have Guardian Games the same week that Marathon drops. And to fast forward for a moment before we touch on that, beyond March, currently, the store schedule runs up until April 28th. Typically, this schedule covers up until the major update, and with the patch this week, Bungie actually extended it to that date, so that's currently our best guess for a Shadow and Order release date on April 28th, of course subject to confirmation from Bungie. Now, for Guardian Games in March, Bungie will have 3 featured weapons. A couple of new ones include Triple Laureate initially, that's an aggressive frame stasis hand cannon. We can see some of the perks here. We're not going to go into massive amounts of detail, but interestingly, this isn't listed as a spread chart hand cannon, but it still has bonuses like 1-2 punch and trench barrel listed in its second column. Also, Chaos Reshaped will be able to roll on this. So it could be kind of an interesting weapon. Another one for Guardian Games is the Beacon, a rapid fire frame solar fusion rifle, which again, looking at it, seems to have some fairly solid perks. Might be a decent damage weapon, things like Envious Arsenal and rewind rounds in the first trait slot, then the second slot, able to roll bait and switch, and Burning Ambition, plus there are a couple of others there too. Also, Bungie will update the Kera Unios, which is the Arc Trace Rifle from Guardian Games, and it will now get things like Trickle Charge and Supercharged Magazine in the first trait slot, which can pair up in slot 2 with Rolling Storm, Jolt-in feedback, and a bunch of other more common trace rifle traits. So that's the weapon side for Guardian Games. Typically we also see armor sets, plus there'll be cosmetics like these emblems, and no doubt Bungie will buff out the Eververse store with a bunch of stuff too. Otherwise, Colin Deek shared there appears to be a Trials of Osiris variant for Guardian Games, where it's basically a class playlist, and hopefully we'll see the return of Rushdown, that kind of boss rush mode that we had last year. After March, we can only assume that Shadow and Order will eventually actually drop. With it being a major update, it has the potential to be more interesting, obviously, than the event content, but players also hope it's a lot better than Ash and Iron, the last major update. There was an in-game teaser, which we assume was accidentally placed there, suggesting there could be an activity focused around a Hive weapons foundry, a sort of core focus on a specific legendary weapon in reference to the lore, and Dredgen's kind of being a big part of the narrative. In major updates, Bungie typically also update kind of portal offerings, key activities, and the other component that Bungie had outlined for the fourth major update of the year is a, quote, Pantheon 2.0 event, which according to rumours would also include bosses from Scourge of the Past, Crown of Sorrow, and Spire of Stars. So assuming that we get another expansion later in the year, Pantheon 2.0 would kind of follow the core Shadow and Order content. Plus Bungie had suggested that they'd have other quality of life components in Shadow and Order, like the ability to enhance legendary weapon tiers, potentially updates to loot pools from the Edge of Fate era, reintroducing things like Mint Retrograde or Texet gear to drop in certain playlists, and more. The other thing which is lined up is Call to Arms, of course. We assume this probably still comes after Shadow and Order, although obviously that's subject to change. And the event will probably be very similar to last time, but there's a new flaming helmet, the one we can see on screen here, as well as a bunch of cosmetic items, including an ornament for the service of Lizaku, and probably weapon attunement for this season's weapons, all the event things, that will likely include King Orfeo the Heron, potential heavy metal weapons, and Gizmo Weft being farmable, as well as holofoils and things for them. So unless Bungie pull that forward and have it in early April or something, I think it's safe to assume that if Shadow and Order does drop at the end of April, we're probably looking at Call to Arms in May or June, especially if they're also still going to be dropping this raid and dungeon event type thing. So for those who wanted to know what is most likely to happen, there we go. Hopefully, Bungie will give us an official announcement for all of this stuff. I'd love it if they do it before Marathon, whenever they announce the actual Shadow and Order schedule. Like I said, the assumption is that they have to do that before March, so it's still possible that in February we'll get some important communications, but a lot of people think they'll probably wait till after Marathon to give the bigger roadmap for the future of the game, and I think that's entirely likely, or at least possible as well. So if you wanted to know what we know, that is what we know. Not related to Destiny 2, but another component that we'll get in February is very likely to be the open beta for Marathon, so if you're starved of other games to play or Destiny stuff to do, I guess you can at least jump in and see what you think of it, right? Or not. I'm not telling you what to do, man. There we go. If you found the video interesting or have any thoughts on it, drop them down below. If you want to see more Destiny content, Marathon updates, Bungie updates, hit subscribe and I'll keep you posted. But for now, I appreciate you tuning in and I hope you guys have an awesome day.